Most people repeat the Lord's Prayer as if it were a familiar melody, something they learned long ago and never really questioned. But imagine, just for a moment, that these words were not meant to be recited automatically. Imagine they were meant to open a door. What if Jesus gave this prayer not as a routine, but as a map that reveals who God is, who you are, and how heaven moves when you speak? The first lines of this prayer carry more meaning than most people notice, and once you see it, you cannot return to the old way of praying. Before Jesus said a single word of the prayer, he was responding to a request that still echoes today. Lord, teach us to pray. The disciples had watched him pray many times. They saw how he spoke to God with confidence, peace, and authority. They realized his power was not only in his miracles, but also in his relationship with the Father. They wanted that. They wanted to understand the way he connected with heaven so easily. And Jesus answered their request with a prayer that begins in the most unexpected way. He did not tell them to approach God with fear. He did not begin with distance. He did not place God behind a barrier. Instead, he used a word that breaks every wall people build between themselves and God. He began with "Our Father." This was a shock at the time. People were used to approaching God with fear, rules, and rituals. But Jesus simplified everything by using one word that redefined the entire relationship. Father. A word that speaks of closeness, identity, and belonging. But here is the part most people overlook. Jesus did not say, "My Father." He said, "Our Father." This invites everyone into the same relationship he himself had. It means you are not praying alone. It means you are not approaching an unknown force. You are speaking to someone who sees you, knows you, and welcomes you. And when you say it with understanding, something inside you shifts. Your posture changes, your mindset changes. You stop approaching God like a stranger and start approaching him like a child who has the right to enter the room. Yet for many people this is difficult. Some feel unworthy, some feel forgotten, some feel damaged by their own experiences with earthly fathers. But Jesus knew that. That is why he anchored this prayer in heaven, not earth. When he said, "Our Father in heaven," he was pointing you toward the perfect Father, the one who is not limited by human failures. He was showing you that prayer starts with identity, not insecurity. And if you start with identity, everything else becomes clearer. This is where the prayer becomes powerful, because when you understand who you are speaking to, you no longer pray hoping God might hear you. You pray knowing he is already listening. You no longer speak to gain attention. You speak because you already have it, and that changes everything. This is why Jesus chose to begin the prayer this way. He wanted you to come to God from a place of trust, not fear. A place of relationship, not distance. Then he adds the next phrase, one that reveals the foundation of how you approach God. Hallowed be your name. Many people say these words without understanding their weight, but Jesus was teaching a mindset. He was teaching reverence, not routine. He was showing that when you speak to God, you are speaking to the one whose name carries power and authority. This is not meant to intimidate you. It is meant to remind you that prayer is not empty or weak. Prayer connects you to a holy God whose presence changes things. And here is the tension most people feel without realizing it. On one hand, Jesus wants you to approach God as your Father. On the other hand, he wants you to remember that this Father is holy, powerful, and set apart. This tension creates balance. It keeps your prayer from becoming casual, and it keeps your heart from becoming distant. You approach God with both confidence and reverence. This balance shapes the entire way you pray. When you say, "Hallowed be your name," you are declaring that God's name deserves honor in your thoughts, your words, and your actions. You are reminding your mind that you are not speaking to just anyone. You are speaking to the God whose name has authority over fear, over sickness, over confusion, over every obstacle that tries to silence your faith. And this line of the prayer invites you into a different way of living. It challenges you to speak and act in a way that honors the one you are praying to. This opening of the prayer is not passive. It is not simple. It is not meant to be rushed. It is the foundation for everything that comes next. It aligns your heart before you make any request. It prepares your mind before you ask for anything. It creates the posture you need to understand the rest of the prayer. Because if you do not start with relationship and reverence, the rest of your prayer loses power. So as you hear these words now, let yourself pause. Ask yourself how you have been approaching God. Have you been praying like someone who feels distant? Have you been praying like someone unsure if God is listening? Or have you been praying like someone who knows they are speaking to their Father in heaven? This is the question Jesus invites you to face. And this is the starting point that can transform your entire prayer life. Before we continue, write the word Father in the comments so you remember the foundation of this prayer. And if this message is helping you see the Lord's Prayer in a new way, leave a like so more people can learn what you are learning right now. The next part will take this even deeper. There is a moment in the Lord's Prayer that people often rush through without realizing the weight of what they are saying. It is a line that does not simply describe something, it calls for something. It changes the direction of your heart and the world around you. When Jesus taught the next words, he was not speaking softly. He was declaring something that confronts the entire structure of human desire. And most people repeat these words without letting them reshape anything in their lives. Before Jesus said, "Your kingdom come," he had already established who we are speaking to, a Father in heaven whose name is holy. But now he shifts the focus. He moves from identity to purpose. He moves from relationship to mission. He moves from who God is to what God wants to do. And this is where the prayer becomes intense. Because when you pray for his kingdom to come, you are not asking for something small. You are asking for a change of power, a change of order, a change that starts in you before it moves anywhere else. The first time the disciples heard Jesus speak about the kingdom of God, they were expecting something political, something external, something visible. But Jesus kept pointing them to something deeper. He said, "The kingdom is near. The kingdom is within. The kingdom is arriving." And now he invites you to call for that kingdom in your own life. This is more than a request. It is a surrender, a shift from control to trust, a shift from your plans to his direction. The challenge begins right here. Many people want God in their lives, but they do not want him to rule their lives. They want blessings without change, guidance without surrender, comfort without transformation. But Jesus does not leave room for this. When you say, "Your kingdom come," you are asking God to take the throne in every part of your life. You are asking him to lead, to correct, to shape, to interfere when necessary. You are asking him to invade the places you usually try to handle alone. This creates tension because your own kingdom is comfortable. Your own kingdom feels familiar. Your own kingdom gives you the illusion of control. But Jesus calls you to release that illusion and invite something greater. Something that does not depend on your own strength. Something that does not fall apart when life becomes difficult. And the moment you say these words with understanding, the struggle begins between what you want and what God is asking. Then Jesus adds a phrase that goes even deeper and confronts everything inside you. "Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." This is not a passive line. It is not an acceptance of fate. It is an active choice to trust. It is choosing to believe that God's will is wiser, stronger, and more complete than your own. And this is where many people push back, because surrender feels risky. Surrender feels uncertain. Surrender feels like losing control. But Jesus is teaching that the safest place you can be is inside God's will, even when you do not understand it. Think about the moments in your life when things did not go the way you planned. Moments where doors closed. Moments where relationships ended. Moments where opportunities slipped away. Many times, people blame themselves or blame God without realizing that protection sometimes looks like loss. Sometimes, God's will removes what you might have chosen, but saves you from what you could not see. And the only reason you recognize this later is because the outcome proves the intention. Jesus himself faced this struggle. In the final hours before his arrest, he prayed in deep pain. His words reveal the same tension we feel today. He said, "If it is possible, let this pass." And yet he ended with the same surrender he teaches us in the Lord's Prayer. "Not my will, but yours be done." This shows that surrender is not effortless. It is not automatic. It is a decision that requires trust even when your emotions are heavy and your understanding is limited. This part of the prayer challenges something inside every person. It asks you to release your timelines, your expectations, your opinions about how things should unfold, and it invites God to write the story. Not because you are weak, but because he sees farther than you do. When you pray this with understanding, something shifts. Your focus moves from fear to trust. Your thoughts move from anxiety to alignment. Your heart moves from pressure to peace. But here is the key detail many people miss. When Jesus said, "On earth as it is in heaven," he was reminding us that heaven is the blueprint. Heaven is the standard. Heaven is the reality that should shape your decisions. In heaven there is order. In heaven there is purpose. In heaven there is clarity. And Jesus teaches that prayer is not meant to pull you away from the world. It is meant to pull heaven into the world through you. This means your daily choices become part of this prayer. The way you speak, the way you treat people, the way you respond when things are difficult, the way you handle your time, your thoughts, your desires. All of these reveal whether you are building your own kingdom or inviting God's kingdom to come through your life. Prayer becomes the starting point, but your actions become the expression of that prayer. This is why this part of the Lord's Prayer is not comfortable. It confronts your habits. It confronts your intentions. It confronts the parts of you that want God to move without allowing him to guide you. But this confrontation is not meant to break you. It is meant to free you. Because when your will conflicts with God's will, you are choosing between a limited view and an eternal plan. Between what you think you want and what God knows you need. The question becomes personal. Are you praying for God's kingdom to come, or are you asking him to build yours? Are you surrendering your will, or are you hoping he will follow your plans? These questions are uncomfortable but necessary, because once you answer them honestly, you begin to pray with understanding. If this message is opening your eyes, write the word kingdom in the comments so you remember this moment later. And if this helped you see this part of the Lord's Prayer differently, leave a like so more people can find this message. There is a moment in the Lord's Prayer where Jesus shifts the direction again, and this shift is easy to miss because the words seem simple. But this is often where the biggest struggles in a person's life appear. When Jesus says, "Give us this day our daily bread," he is not just talking about food. He is revealing a mindset that is hard for many people to accept, because these words confront something we rarely admit: the fear of not having enough. Before this point, the prayer has focused on God's identity, his holiness, his kingdom, and his will. But now Jesus turns to your needs, and he begins with something so basic that you might overlook the power hidden inside it. He focuses on daily provision, not tomorrow, not the entire year, not the future that keeps you awake at night, just today. This is uncomfortable because most people do not worry about today. They worry about everything else. They worry about what might happen, what could go wrong, what they cannot control. Jesus pulls you back from all those fears with one clear sentence. He is teaching that trust must happen one day at a time, not in large leaps, not in big victories, not in long-term guarantees, in small, steady, daily moments of dependence. And that is difficult because the world pushes you to plan years ahead, to secure everything, to control every outcome. But Jesus calls you to a different rhythm, one that removes the pressure and replaces it with trust. Think about how often you feel stressed because you are trying to solve tomorrow's problems without tomorrow's strength. You worry about things that have not happened. You replay scenarios in your mind. You imagine worst-case outcomes. And in the middle of all of that pressure, Jesus teaches a prayer that moves you away from that mindset. He calls you to ask for what you need today, not what you fear tomorrow. This reveals something important. God cares about your daily life, your responsibilities, your struggles, your basic needs. He is not distant from the small things. He is present in them. And when Jesus says to ask for daily bread, he is showing that God wants to be part of your everyday survival, not just your spiritual moments. This is why this line of the prayer feels both simple and uncomfortable. It exposes how much we try to handle everything on our own. To understand this better, think about the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. They had no food source, no farms, no markets, nothing to depend on except God. And every morning, he provided what they needed for that day, not for tomorrow, not for storage, just for today. If they tried to save extra, it would spoil. This was not punishment, it was training. Training to live with daily trust, not long-term control. Jesus connects that same lesson to your life through this prayer. You might try to hold everything tightly. You might try to plan every detail. You might feel anxious when things move beyond your control. But the lesson Jesus gives here is straightforward. Trust is built daily. Peace is built daily. Strength is built daily. You do not need tomorrow's answers today. You only need God's provision for this moment. And that is exactly what Jesus invites you to pray for. But there is something deeper happening under the surface. When you ask for daily bread, you are also admitting that you cannot sustain yourself alone. You are acknowledging that no matter how capable or independent you think you are, you still need God. And this kind of humility is difficult in a world that tells you to be self-sufficient. Jesus is teaching that dependence on God is not weakness. It is the source of strength. It is the source of peace that cannot be shaken. This prayer also fights against the constant pressure to compare your life with others. When you focus on daily bread, you stop measuring yourself by someone else's life. You stop feeling overwhelmed by what others have. You stop chasing things that do not actually bring peace. You return to the present. You return to what God is giving you right now, not what you wish you had or what others show online. Jesus brings you back to the simple truth. Today is enough when God is with you. This line of the prayer also challenges the fear of scarcity, the fear that there will not be enough resources, enough opportunities, enough provision for you. But Jesus reminds you that God is a provider who has never failed. He provided for people in the wilderness. He provided for Elijah in a drought. He provided for thousands with just a few loaves. And he teaches you to pray with the same confidence. You do not need to fear tomorrow because the God who provides today will be there tomorrow as well. Still, it is one thing to hear this and another to live it. Trusting daily can feel risky. It can feel like letting go of the control you are used to holding. But this prayer is not about ignoring responsibility. It is about releasing fear. It is about understanding that you do not have to carry the full weight of your future on your shoulders. When you ask for daily bread, you are asking God to join you in the present moment and meet you where you are. This mindset brings peace because it breaks the chain of constant worry. It allows you to breathe again. It frees your mind from stress. It reminds you that God is not asking you to handle a lifetime of problems at once. He is asking you to trust Him today and then trust Him again tomorrow and again the next day. Not through pressure, but through relationship. So as you think about this, ask yourself something honest. How much of your stress comes from trying to live in tomorrow instead of today? How much energy do you lose because you are trying to control things that are not even part of today's responsibilities? Jesus gives you this line of the prayer to pull you back from that cycle and help you live with clarity and peace. If this part of the prayer is speaking to you now, I want you to comment the word today so you never forget this moment. And if this helped you breathe a little deeper, leave a like so more people can find this message and experience the same clarity. There is a turning point in the Lord's Prayer that many people try to avoid because this part reaches into places we usually keep hidden. It touches wounds, memories, and emotions we learn to cover instead of confront. When Jesus says, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors," He is not only speaking about wrongs you have done, He is speaking about wrongs done to you. And this is the moment where the prayer becomes deeply personal. Before this, the prayer dealt with God's kingdom, God's will, and daily provision. But now Jesus moves into the area that impacts your heart more than anything else: forgiveness. And He does not begin lightly. He connects your forgiveness from God to your forgiveness toward others. This connection is uncomfortable because it forces you to look at the places you have been hurt and the places you have hurt others. It brings to the surface things you would rather ignore, yet Jesus places this right in the center of the prayer. The opening shock of this section is intentional. Jesus knows that forgiveness is not a simple decision. It is not automatic. It is not natural. And that is why He includes it in the prayer that shapes your approach to God. Because whether you realize it or not, unforgiveness affects everything. It affects your thoughts. It affects your emotions. It affects your ability to pray. It affects your peace. It even affects the way you see yourself. Jesus begins by inviting you to ask for forgiveness. This alone requires honesty. It requires humility. It requires you to admit the moments when you acted in anger, spoke carelessly, made the wrong choices, or treated someone with less love than they deserved. Asking for forgiveness means accepting responsibility, not blame. It means facing your own imperfections without shame. It means opening your heart to God instead of hiding from Him. But the second part of this line is where many people struggle: as we forgive our debtors. Jesus moves the focus from what you have done to what others have done to you. And this is where the tension begins, because forgiveness is easier to accept than to give. You want God to forgive you immediately, completely, without hesitation. But when someone hurts you, the first reaction is often the opposite. You want explanations, you want apologies, you want closure, you want the pain to be acknowledged before the forgiveness is offered. Yet Jesus does not attach conditions to forgiveness. He does not say, "Forgive them if they apologize," or "Forgive them if you feel ready," or "Forgive them if they change." He simply says, "Forgive." Not as a favor to the other person, but as freedom for your heart. Forgiving someone does not mean pretending everything is fine. It does not mean trusting them again. It does not mean accepting their behavior. It means releasing the weight that their actions placed on you. Jesus knows how heavy that weight can be. He knows how memories can repeat in your mind, how pain can shape your reactions, how resentment can harden your heart. That is why He places forgiveness inside the main prayer He teaches His followers. Because unforgiveness does not stay in one area of your life. It spreads. It affects the way you think. It affects the way you treat people. It affects the way you pray. It becomes a silent filter through which everything else passes. But forgiveness works the opposite way. It clears the filter, it opens the heart, it softens the thoughts, it restores what resentment tries to damage. Jesus includes this part because he wants you to experience freedom, not emotional weight. He wants you to stop carrying things you were never meant to hold, and he knows that if you do not release the past, it will follow you into the future. To understand this, imagine how much energy you lose by holding on to bitterness. Every time the memory comes back, it takes something from you. Every time you replay the moment, it drains you. Every time you think about what happened, it steals your peace. Forgiveness is not about erasing the memory. It is about removing the control that memory has over you. It is about breaking the cycle that keeps you from growing. Jesus also knows that forgiveness is not something you can do by your own strength. That is why he ties your forgiveness to God's forgiveness. When you experience God's mercy, you learn how to give mercy. When you experience grace, you learn how to offer grace. When you see how much you have been forgiven, you begin to understand that forgiving someone else is not losing anything. It is gaining your freedom back. But Jesus does not only address your pain, he also addresses the pain you caused others. He shows that forgiveness is not one-directional. There are moments in your life where you must not only forgive but also seek forgiveness. This requires humility. It requires awareness. It requires courage to admit when you were wrong. And this is just as freeing as forgiving someone else. The prayer becomes a mirror. It shows you both sides, the part of you that has been hurt and the part of you that has caused hurt. Jesus does not focus on guilt. He focuses on transformation. He teaches that forgiveness creates space for healing. It makes room for peace. It restores what bitterness destroys. It reconnects you with God and protects your heart from becoming hard. But what if the person who hurt you never apologizes? What if the situation never ends the way you hoped? What if the pain still feels fresh? Jesus still calls you to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because your heart deserves freedom. Forgiveness does not change the past. It changes your relationship with the past. It allows you to move forward without carrying emotional chains. And as you consider this, ask yourself something honest. What weight have you been carrying that you no longer want to hold? What memory still takes your peace? What name appears in your mind when the word forgiveness is mentioned? Jesus is not asking you to pretend. He is inviting you to release the weight that has been affecting your life for too long. If this part of the prayer spoke to you in any way, I want you to comment the word release so you remember this moment later. And if this message opened your eyes to something hidden in your heart, leave a like so more people can be helped by the same truth. There is a point in the Lord's Prayer where the tone shifts again, and this time it becomes more urgent. Jesus moves from forgiveness to something many people underestimate until they face it directly. When he teaches us to pray, "Lead us not into temptation," he is not creating fear. He is revealing a reality most people ignore until they fall. This part of the prayer confronts the quiet battles happening inside your mind, your habits, your reactions, and your weaknesses. And Jesus places it here to protect you before the battle even starts. Most people assume temptation is something they must deal with only when it appears. But Jesus teaches something different. He teaches that temptation is not occasional, it is constant. It does not arrive with warning. It does not wait for the perfect moment. It works silently, showing up in thoughts, in emotions, in patterns you do not notice at first. That is why Jesus tells you to pray about temptation before the moment comes. He wants you to stay aware, not reactive. This line of the prayer reveals something essential. Humans are not as strong as they believe. We like to think we can resist anything, that we can control our impulses, that we know our limits, but temptation does not work that way. It targets the places where you feel confident. It finds the cracks you do not want to admit. It speaks to desires you thought you buried. It appears when you are tired, stressed, angry, or lonely. That is why Jesus teaches you to ask for help in advance. "Lead us not into temptation" is a cry for direction, not fear. It means asking God to guide your steps so you do not walk into situations that weaken you. It means asking Him to close doors that look appealing but carry danger. It means asking Him to expose the traps you cannot see. Jesus knew the spiritual world is active even when you are not paying attention. He knew temptation is not only about desire, it is about strategy, and the enemy studies your patterns more than you study your own. This becomes very clear when you look at the story of Peter. Jesus warned him, saying the enemy wanted to sift him like wheat. This was not a casual warning. It was a spiritual alert. But Peter believed he was strong enough. He insisted he would never fall. And within hours, he fell exactly in the place Jesus predicted, not because he was weak, but because he was unprepared. This line of the prayer is meant to protect you from the same mistake. Jesus wants you to stay aware of the battle, not confident in your own strength. But the next part of the prayer intensifies everything. Deliver us from evil. This is not a poetic sentence. It is a direct call for rescue. It acknowledges that evil is not imaginary. It acknowledges that darkness is real. It acknowledges that you need more than willpower to fight it. Jesus places these words at the end of the prayer because they reveal something important. Even if you avoid temptation, even if you walk carefully, there are moments when you face battles you cannot escape by yourself. This part of the prayer is an admission that you need God's power, not just guidance. You need protection, not just discipline. You need rescue, not just effort. This is not weakness. This is awareness. Jesus wants you to understand that some battles come from outside you. Some thoughts, some attacks, some pressures do not originate in your mind. They are spiritual. They are designed to discourage you, distract you, weaken your faith, and create confusion inside you. Asking for deliverance means recognizing that you cannot fight spiritual battles with natural strength. This prayer is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create clarity. Many people live unaware of the spiritual influence around them. They think every thought is their own, every emotion is their own, every temptation is just a personal issue. Jesus teaches you that not everything you face comes from your own mind. Some struggles appear because you are growing. Some battles begin because the enemy sees your potential. Some temptations intensify because something in your life is getting stronger. And if you do not recognize this, you carry guilt for battles that were not your fault. Deliver us from evil removes that guilt. It tells you that God is not distant. It tells you He sees every spiritual pressure that you cannot see. It tells you He steps in when the weight becomes too much. It tells you that His protection is greater than any darkness. This part of the prayer gives you confidence, not anxiety. It reminds you that you are not fighting alone. It reminds you that even when you feel overwhelmed, God is lifting the weight you cannot carry. Jesus teaches this because He understands human nature. He knows how fragile humans can feel. He knows how emotional battles can overwhelm the mind. He knows how temptation can appear in the exact moment where your strength feels lowest. He knows how easy it is to believe you are failing when in reality you are fighting something bigger than yourself. This prayer makes sure you never face these moments alone. But there is another layer to this line that many people miss. When you ask God to deliver you from evil, you're also asking Him to remove you from environments, relationships, or influences that feed the temptation you struggle with. This is where many people hesitate. They want deliverance, but they want to keep the environment that makes them fall. Jesus teaches that true deliverance is not only spiritual, it is also practical. It happens through guidance, removal, protection, and awareness. This means God may close doors to protect you. He may distance you from certain people. He may change your route. He may interrupt your plans. It might feel confusing in the moment, but later you see it was protection. Asking for deliverance means accepting His intervention even when you do not understand it immediately. This part of the prayer forces you to ask yourself a deeper question. What areas of your life have you been trying to fight alone? What battles keep repeating because you never ask for help in advance? What temptations feel impossible because you try to overcome them only when they appear? Jesus is showing you that preparation is just as important as strength. Awareness is just as important as courage. Guidance is just as important as resistance. And if this message reached you in a personal way, I want you to comment the word strength so you remember this moment later. If this part helped you understand your inner battles differently, leave a like so this message reaches someone else who needs the same clarity. There is a moment near the end of the Lord's Prayer that many people repeat without realizing its meaning, and yet it completes everything Jesus taught before it. It is a declaration, not a request. A closing statement that does not come from emotion but from certainty. And this is where Jesus pulls together every part of the prayer and gives you the final perspective you need. When He ends with, "For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever," He is not adding decoration. He is reinforcing a truth that makes every other line meaningful. Jesus knows something about human nature. After praying for guidance, forgiveness, protection, and provision, people often return to fear. They worry again, they doubt again, they question again. And so Jesus ends the prayer with a reminder that cuts through every fear and every uncertainty. He reminds you who is in control. He reminds you who has authority. He reminds you who holds the last word in every situation you face. This final line is meant to lift your eyes above the struggle and anchor you in the reality of God's rule. This part of the prayer confronts something deeply emotional. Many people pray with desperation, hoping God hears them. Many pray wondering if their words make any difference. Many pray with a mix of faith and fear. Jesus ends the prayer by showing that faith does not rest on what you feel. Faith rests on who God is. And this final sentence is the declaration that resets your perspective and strengthens your heart. For yours is the kingdom. This means the world is not random. Life is not without order. Evil does not win. Darkness does not stay. God's rule is not temporary. It is not threatened. It does not shift with culture or with emotions. It is stable. It is unchanging. It is above every earthly power and every personal worry. When you say these words, you remind yourself that you are praying to a God who reigns, not partially, not occasionally, fully. Jesus does not stop there. He continues with the power. This is another correction for the human heart. He knows that when people face difficulties, they often look at their own strength, their own resources, their own abilities. And when those feel limited, fear grows. Jesus ends the prayer by reminding you that God's power has no limitations. His strength does not weaken. His ability does not fade. When you pray, you are not relying on your own power. You are relying on His. And this changes how you approach every challenge. Then Jesus adds, and the glory. This moves the focus again. It shows that everything God does flows from His nature and His character. He does not answer prayers for attention or applause. He answers because it reveals who He is. His glory is the expression of His goodness, His authority, and His presence. When you say these words, you are acknowledging that every victory in your life comes from Him, not from your own success. It keeps your heart humble and keeps your perspective aligned. But the last word is the one that holds everything in place. Forever. This breaks the fear that things will fall apart. This breaks the worry that peace will not last. This breaks the anxiety that you might lose what God has given you. The word forever means His rule is eternal. His power is eternal. His glory is eternal. Nothing can threaten it. Nothing can undo it. Nothing can remove it. Jesus ends the prayer with a truth strong enough to silence every doubt. And here is something important. This ending is not only about God, it is about you. Jesus teaches you to pray these words so that you remember who is guiding your life. When the prayer ends with certainty, your heart ends with confidence. When the prayer ends with truth, your emotions end with clarity. When the prayer ends with trust, your mind stops fighting battles that God has already won. This final part of the prayer is not just a conclusion, it is a declaration that breaks fear, corrects perspective, and strengthens faith. It changes the way you walk through the day. It changes the way you think about challenges. It changes the way you pray the next time. Because once you see that everything belongs to God, His kingdom, His power, His glory, you stop carrying burdens you were never meant to hold. Jesus ends the prayer this way because He wants you to see prayer as alignment, not desperation. He wants you to understand that you are not trying to convince God to act. You are aligning yourself with what He is already doing. You are stepping into His plan, His timing, His protection, and His strength. This ending gives you the confidence to pray again tomorrow, knowing you are not praying into uncertainty. You are praying into a kingdom that never ends. Now stop for a moment and think about the prayer as a whole. Each line brings you into a deeper level of trust. Each sentence shifts your focus from worry to purpose. Each part pulls you away from fear and closer to clarity. This is why Jesus taught this prayer, not to give you a script, but to give you a structure. Not to give you words to repeat, but a way of praying that changes how you see God, how you see yourself, and how you see the world. The final challenge Jesus leaves you with is simple but powerful. Will you pray this prayer with understanding, or will you repeat it without meaning? Will you see it as a routine, or will you allow it to shape the way you think, speak, and live? Because the Lord's Prayer is not only something to recite, it is something to experience. It is a path, a mindset, a transformation that continues long after the final word is spoken. If this ending helped you see the prayer differently, write forever in the comments so you remember this moment. And if this whole series opened your eyes to something deeper, leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss the next teachings. If you want to keep learning and receiving content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel.